Welcome back to Serious Talk. Today we're kicking off a brand new series, Salesforce at Scale. If you've ever inherited an org that's mostly working but getting slower, harder to change, and increasingly expensive to enhance, this episode's just for you. I'm joined by returning guest Allie Nelson, our principal sales engineer, and Al Huerta, our project delivery director. We're unpacking one of the hardest topics to prioritize, technical debt, what it is, how it shows up, and the first practical steps to start paying it down without stopping the business. Thanks for coming along today. All right, welcome to Serious Talk. Got returning guest Allie Nelson on the show today. She's in our principal sales and design group, and our project delivery director, Al Huerta. Great to have you here today, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, excited to be here.
Good. So we're starting a new series. You guys are episode 1 of this. We're going to be talking about Salesforce at scale. Inevitably, when we do a lot of delivery projects, Al, you can probably summarize this with some of the scars over the years, but very often we get introduced to clients who are getting used to Salesforce for the first time. And that in and of itself is no small task, but inevitably to get proper ownership and have true return on investment, you really got to take care of this thing. That involves things like release notes, training, and data stewardship. And the one we're going to dive into today is probably one of the most critical and hardest to get prioritized on the project list, technical debt. Allie, I know you got some thoughts on this subject. Why don't you start by kind of defining what technical debt is for us, and then we'll get into it from there.
Yeah, so the definition that is not as fun to listen to is that technically anything that you build or customize in Salesforce can count as technical debt. Technical debt is stuff in your org that when piled up can cause problems. And so the hard part is that for a lot of people, it's tough to know what technical debt is until it's a problem, which is kind of the wrong time to be learning what it is. So when we're talking about technical debt, we're really talking about the balance of designing your system in a lean way versus adding in anything you want at any time and really bloating your system. So it's a little bit tough to define, but when you see it, you know it.
Yeah, definitely. So, and it's one of those things that to have somebody be familiar enough with an org in order to measure anything in that pile against that goal or what you're trying to get. If you don't have good documentation and consistency of an owner, that's a harder thing to find as well. So we'll get into some of those items. Al, you've been around this a little while. What are some examples of technical debt that you've seen pop up over the years?
Now, there's a tremendous number of examples. Anything from flows that are no longer used by anybody, fields, page layouts that are no longer leveraged, apps that are created and not actually used at all. We see a lot of cross-reference formula fields that are created that end up hitting caps and limits within Salesforce that people don't realize they're there until they need to create a new one, and they realize that they cannot any longer. So there's a lot of things that can be done inside of Salesforce in a poor, not thought out way that can eventually come back to bite you when you need to make improvements or optimizations at a larger scale.
Yeah.
And we typically see that the problem is after implementation happens, after a customer stood up, when things are taken internally, there might not be a strong governance process for any kind of changes or any requests that are made to update or optimize or enhance the system. And then an admin might take free reign to just fulfill every request they hear. So every user gets what they want. And at the end of the day, it becomes an absolute mess. Things get hard-coded to specific users. There will actually be an entire process that's hard-coded to one particular person. When that person leaves now, you have a process that exists that no longer functions and breaks other things. It can become an absolute nightmare. So this is why we really strongly advise a lot of governance, a lot of mulling over changes and understanding what they are and what they'll mean before you even do something as creating a simple field in Salesforce.
Yeah. I think that a lot of times, we think about examples of technical debt, and it's very easy to think that technical debt only happens to people who are, just being very cavalier about their system and don't care about their system. But the reality is that technical debt is a byproduct of not intentionally planning out your org and how it's going to be built and how you're going to make changes. Because honestly, for a lot of the customers that we see and interact with, it's not because someone didn't care about the system. It's because they may be a solo admin who just doesn't have the time and support to be able to, plan to be able to really take that time to design, and they're responding to changes from 400 users for a solo admin. So when I was in school, one of my teachers always used to say, it's not your fault, but it is your problem. And so it's something that a lot of people really need to deal with, even if it's not any particular one person's fault.
Yeah, and I would add one more thing is it doesn't even mean that you did anything wrong, right? For nearly actually over 2 decades. I'll give an example. If you were looking at a contact record and you wanted a field on the account to appear on the contact page, the only way to do that was to create a formula field on the contact that pulled it up and display it. In the last 4 months, a feature just came out where you're not required to create that field that anymore. You can do it on the Lightning page. So it may be the nature of the design of the platform caused you to do something that's no longer, I can think of probably 300 or 400 fields in the org that I used to oversee that could be eliminated by that one new enhancement that came by Salesforce. And it's not the sexiest thing to put on your project list to go replace formula fields with updated Lightning pages. But if you really want to make the org efficient and optimal and easier to own, things you have to do. So we'll kind of start peeling the onion back here a little bit. If a company doesn't address this, what are some risks that inevitably come up?
Oh boy, so many. Again, it's something that it won't be a problem until it's a problem. And when it's a problem, it's a big one. Often we see a lot of issues with technical debt causing an org to run more slowly, usually a lot of issues with DevOps processes and testing, deployment. A lot of issues can arise when, like Al said, you're trying to create a new formula field and you didn't realize you're hitting limits. Well, now you have to go re-architect everything that exists previously so that you can make sure you're not hitting limits. When we think about how we care for other long-term investments, it's like my Ford Escort that I had when I was 17. Turns out that if you don't take care of it, don't flush that transmission, you get to college and you find screws in your transmission pan. So it's definitely something where you're gonna start running into problems, and then all of a sudden your org might just stop working. A lot of automation can shut down. A lot of Salesforce native processes that depend on computing power can also be affected as well.
And we see this really often when somebody new maybe comes in to take over an operation, a new COO or CIO, and they want to make a big enhancement, add another cloud maybe to Salesforce, do some, overall re-architecting. And they realize that much later that the cost that they expect that to be is actually going to be 2 or 3 times the amount they anticipated, because they have to undo so much previous technical debt, rework things that exist in the system before to be able to accommodate these changes. And it becomes a major issue and a major impediment to moving forward with enhancements that the organization needs, just because of the sins of the past.
I think to your point too, Greg, there are a lot of new features coming out that do require you to be using some of the out-of-the-box structure Salesforce has. And often when somebody has over-customized Salesforce, it can prevent them from using newly released features, which essentially means you're not getting the best value out of your system. We all know that Salesforce is not the cheapest platform out there. And yes, it can be expensive, but also if you can use all of the features you're paying for, it is well worth it. And it really sucks to see somebody struggling to use these new features that they are paying for. We want you to be able to get that value.
Yeah, your example was spot on. And this is where my brain goes. It's the first thought that came to my brain this morning when I woke and went to the coffee pot was, I could save a lot of money by not doing oil changes on my truck until that backfires, right? I mean, we all can relate to that example, but that's really what it relates to. I know one of the things we talked about here also is training. Most companies that go to Salesforce are not companies who are static, right? They're companies who have a finite product offering, a small number of clients, and a small number of employees, and they don't have to change as a whole lot. You don't buy one of the most robust agile platforms if you plan to stay the same, which means you're constantly wanting to change. To Allie's point, if you're over customizing all the time, if you're adding a field every time somebody asks for it, and you're trying to document it, and you're trying to train on it, sooner or later, you're going to lose track of that. And what do people do who don't have clear training on what they should use? When they don't know what to do, they do what they know. I'll just stick it in this field, and somebody asks, I'll tell them that's where I put it. That makes for horrible reporting. Again, all these things are to drive high value so people can make good decisions based on the data we collected. And if you don't organize it, if you don't document, if you don't train all with that same spirit, you quickly lose hold of the reins.
Well, and I think if you are not designing your system for the user experience and the business outcomes you want, it's not going to be a system people want to use. If you've got a new hire coming in, you're trying to train them on this system, and you're having to explain, "Oh, well, this thing you're looking for is over there. I know it doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's where it got put. And this other related thing is in a completely different spot." That new hire is going to have a lot of trouble adapting to this system because it's not intuitive. So when we want to design new features, we want to think about where they need to go, think about how we can reduce technical debt, how we can use fewer fields, how we can put them in places that will matter and have impact.
Yeah, definitely. All right. I think we've fairly well stated the case that this is something you can ignore, right? You're going to deal with this either in an intentional planned way or in a reactive, I can't get the key in the lock kind of a way. You're going to deal with it. What are some blockers that we see clients kind of throwing up as why they don't do this?
Money.
And I think the biggest one is that there's no immediate ROI. So even if you have the budget, it's hard to justify spending the budget on something that won't produce revenue in the short or medium term.
Yep. It really feels like it costs a lot more for not really feeling like you're getting the value out of it. And it can take time, so it can slow things down, especially if we're coming into an org that is pre-existing and they're saying, "Hey, we're really struggling with some key experience issues here." Often the underlying cause is technical debt that needs to be addressed. And it's really hard to say, "Hey, this isn't a quick fix because, yeah, that one flow is not working." But that flow is not working because we have 16 other flows and 4 Apex classes and a bunch of fields that are all contributing to this issue. It takes time, it takes money, and often for the users themselves, your end users, really, if you're addressing technical debt, the only thing that they should see is fewer errors or maybe slightly faster operation. So it's not a cute upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
True. Yeah. And I think to that point, if you say you're going to do this once a year, one, it's hard to prioritize. We used to do this a lot in December. A lot of times our people are taking their vacation that time of year, right? So there's not as many users in there. There's not as many meetings planned. This is a great time to do it. But you also, if you only do it once a year, you're going to be limited to how much you can squeeze in. So now you actually have to have meetings about, of all the things we know that are debt, how do we prioritize which one we attack? And as soon as you start that, it's like pulling a thread on your favorite sweater. You find out it's on 3-page layouts, 11 report types, 10 flows, and you don't just go delete the field, right? You got to delete every reference to it. And if you didn't, the field didn't make itself. It's there for a reason. At some point, we put stuff in that field. So what do we do with the data that was in it? Do we just delete it and let the bygones be bygones, or do we back that up? If we do, where do we back it up? How do people have access to it? So again, it's easy to really see how this is going to play out.
Yeah.
All right.
I think just want to say it's important to note just how difficult it can be to extract even just like delete one field. You can have hundreds, if not even thousands of references and dependencies where trying to just get one field deleted is an incredible effort. So just want to not understate how difficult it is just for the simplest technical debt cleanup that you might need to address.
I feel like I'm over here just like nodding vehemently at everything. I'm like, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, we have unanimous agreement on this topic for sure. All right, let's come the other way. It's easy to, people probably can relate to why they kick the can down the road, don't get around to it. Let's to the extent we can. It's really hard to quantify specific benefits without defining specific problems, but we all have seen certain types of problems that come from this. So what are some benefits of addressing technical debt?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing is that you are going to get more value out of your org. Obviously, making that value proposition in terms of dollars and cents is going to be tough, but I promise. It's one of those things where it's like, oh, you're going to have to trust me. You will get more value out of your org because your org is going to run faster. People are going to like using it more. And ultimately, you are going to put yourself in a position where you can use all of the features to their fullest extent.
Yeah, I think the next question on the list ties closely into this, and it's how do we prevent technical debt? I'll tell you the one lesson that we learned when we started prioritizing removing technical debt is we started building things better. When you start, I mean, it's like doing a root cause analysis on anything, right? If you start getting rid of technical debt, you go, why did I do that? Who asked for that? Why is it there? Why did it stay so long? Now, every time you get, when somebody comes and says, hey, I want to do so-and-so, in the back of your mind, there's this lesson. Oh, this is not going to stack up well. Let's have a deeper conversation before we do something next time instead of doing it. How many times have you seen like temporary fields created or fields that are called deprecated and they never actually get deleted, right? So we've all seen that. People actually have some intention. It's just a matter of prioritizing.
Yeah, I think that prevention is really It's about planning and planning well and having intention behind what you're doing. When we talk about a lot of the basics, especially, I think, Al, we've been in this business for a while. We're both very young. You guys can't see us. We're both extremely young, both early 20s, but we have some years of experience in this, and I think it's very easy to go overboard with a lot of the basics once you've gotten to a point where you're working in more complex things daily. And so even if it feels super simple to add a field, throw up a report real quick, even things like unused reports are technical debt, and doing things with intention and documenting that intention will help you every single time. Even if it feels like, yes, we definitely need this field, if you can't articulate the reason you need it, that's a problem.
Expectation management within organizations is really important. I think a lot of these problems are caused because the business is, they're yelling for something, they need it right now, and there isn't time to really think through the ramifications, and things become very reactive. So having a schedule of when things will be taken in, when they'll be looked at and triaged, and then expectations for when we'll actually address specific items is really important. It's that whole governance process and establishing that early on and holding to it will prevent a lot of these problems.
Yeah, agreed. When I was a program manager at my last company, I had a sign on my wall behind my desk. I had DTR on it. It stood for define the requirement. And people would show up and read that and inevitably go, "Oh, I can tell you what I want. I don't care what you want. I want to know why you want it." Is it a text field? Is it a pick list field? Why? If it's text, why? Right? You're not going to have automation tied to a text field because you can't trust it. If it's a pick list, who's the audience? How are they going to consume it? Are you going to send it to them? Is it in a report? Is it on a dashboard? Is it just on the page? If you haven't thought through every single one of those questions, you've not defined your requirement. Period. Mm-hmm. You got to take the time to do that on the front end. All right. So you don't want to ignore this. There are reasons people fight it. There are ways to prevent it. We want to avoid it at all costs. Inevitably, we're going to have somebody listening to this that hasn't done that, and the org's 7 years old, and there's just an overwhelming pile of technical debt. Where in the world do you advise they start?
Have a great BA on your team. Number one is, I think a lot of orgs, especially now, are trying to get by with one admin if they can, one Swiss Army knife person who can be an architect, who can be an admin, who can be a developer. And I think that having a role of business analyst is so overlooked, because the job of a business analyst is to analyze how your business is operating with your technology systems. And the first thing that you need to do if you've got this massive pile of technical debt is you need to analyze your org and see what's out there. Several years ago, I watched an amazing presentation by Michelle Hansen called Unpretzeling Your Org. How do you properly document what's going on in an org that's a little bit older? And so you can use tools to help you with this, but figuring out just what's going on and getting it down on paper so that you can objectively take a look at it is strangely difficult. It's so much more difficult than it sounds. But it is the first thing that you have to do, and business analysts are fantastic at that.
Absolutely. I think taking an automation inventory is extremely important. Basically, plotting down what every automation in the org does, how it runs, what its purpose is. And I do think there are some ways now to extract metadata and run that through LLMs to do some of that work and speed up the process a little bit. So at least you can get your hands around what's actually happening in the background. Because I think that's one of the areas we see the biggest struggles is somebody, every time there's something to automate, they hit new flow every single time. And then it's an absolute bomb. Somebody comes in, they have no idea how anything functions in the back end. So that is a big step you can take.
And, there's tools that can help people with this too. This is not something where we're saying, hey, invest hundreds of manual hours doing this. Elements Cloud will document your org. You run it and it will spit out documentation for how your org is running. Gearset has a new tool that will create a visual diagram of the automation in your org and flows. It takes a couple minutes to run, and then it spits out process flows that you can visually look at and explore. A big one is field usage and report usage. You can create a report of reports and report on how many reports are not used and not being run in your org. You can use Field Trip. There's a couple different field analysis tools to go and find out what fields no one is filling out, because if no one's filling it out, it's clearly not useful to the org and you can get rid of it. There are tools out there that will help. Some of them do cost money, some of them are free, but getting a tool to help you is so important.
Yeah, and I think the last bullet on the list of answers to that question, I'm an engineer. By definition, I'm looking for the problem first. That's what I've been trained to do. But I would say before you even analyze, before you start, well, maybe not before you document, but there needs to be agreement in your organization. I'm talking the sponsors, the stakeholders, whatnot, of A, we're going to do this. B, this is going to be a priority we're going to do very often. Because the idea is this: if you've got a toddler who likes to throw cookies in the back seat and you vacuum the cookies up, but you never address the toddler, did you solve the problem? Right? You got to make sure you've approached that thing. So whether that's limiting how many people have admin rights, just because they're the CEO doesn't mean they should be an admin. Good luck selling that, but that sometimes you have to say no. So, all right, here's a great one, and I think I kind of just answered this, but I really want to hear both of you answer this. Is technical debt removal a project, or is it a culture change?
The removal of specific technical debt is a project, a big one, but the actual work to plan for that and to prevent it from becoming a problem again is a culture change. So I think both.
Yeah,
Well said.
100% agreed.
Well said.
If it feels like the planning skills for the project are going to serve you well long term, and ultimately, if leadership and executives don't value that time spent to prevent and address it, it's going to keep becoming a problem later on. You're going to spend more money eventually.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the reasons we created the enablement coach position here at Sirius. Is it's everybody's excited to get a bike. Maybe you're even excited and they take the training wheels off and the first time you scrape your knees, but then the first time you go down the hill and the wind's in your hair and you're enjoying it, man, it's just fun. And you look up and 3 years have gone by and you've just made a mess of stuff, right? Nobody sets out with intention to do this. So, the culture change part of this, it's not a document, right? I've been through ITIL training, some other stuff about having redundancy in people and position, all this kind of stuff. It actually becomes a part of your mindset. You have to consider it as a lens that you filter design stuff through going forward. So that means not necessarily hiring 8 new people. What it might mean is deputizing people around your company who just seem to have a passion and a heart for this. So we want to make sure that that's the enablement coach side of things, is that we can call that out, help you set those teams up and whatnot. We've got plenty of experience in this. If you can do it as a part of your project, great. That means when you define stakeholders for a project, you pick the right people on the front side so that when you go live, you've had people learning these best practices, not just what we did, but why. And that way, as you go live and you have this kind of committee behind the scenes, the power users, whatever you want to call them, that actually do a good job of helping look out for the best interest of the value of the orgs. All right, let's take this away. I mean, I think we're going to take this list and we'll publish a link to these items in the release notes of this episode, because we said a lot of words. There's a lot of things, but some of the tool names and whatnot, I think will be great for companies to reference. I'm sure we'll have a blog post coming on this in the near future as well. I'd love to give a takeaway for our users to walk away. Because again, you're going to turn around and you're going to look at your org and go, I'm going to change the station and go back to doing what I was doing. There's just a gremlin in my closet and I don't want to face it. The journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step, right? Go do something. So you guys got some takeaways we can hand to our listeners today?
Yes. I think the easiest step to do that doesn't require downloading anything, it doesn't require buying anything, is, if you haven't already, create a report type of reports so you can report on your reports, and just run one on all the reports in your org by the last run date. See if there are any reports that haven't been run in a year. See if there are any reports that have only ever been run by one person. And just try and get an idea of things that are being created in your org that aren't serving any of your users or are not providing business value to you. That's a really easy way to start getting into that vibe of, okay, what does it feel like to look at the state of things in my org? And how do I start to analyze this? I think doing that with reports is a really easy way to get started. If you want to do the same for fields, there are a ton of apps on the App Exchange that you can use. Some of them are paid, some of them are free, but like Field Trip, Field Spy, Cuneiform, a lot of these tools will give you an analysis of all of the fields in your org. And they're not only going to tell you which fields are being filled out and actually used, but they're going to give you data on which fields have data that's almost the exact same in them. Have you accidentally created fields that are serving the same purpose? And it's going to help you just understand what you've got a little bit so that you can start to get in the mindset of technical debt reduction. I think there are a lot of orgs for which this is a very large undertaking, but there are also orgs out there where if you took, I don't know, an hour or two a week to just focus on a different aspect of the org and seeing where you can reduce, where you would prevent a lot of issues from becoming greater problems in the future.
So I think within organizations, it really helps to make sure that there's somebody who specifically owns the overall health of an org, and that somebody is actively documenting everything that's happening inside that org, both business process and also back end. So if you don't have your processes documented, if you don't have your automation documented, start doing it today. Open up the spreadsheet, get it started, and just make that progress little by little, and make sure that somebody ultimately owns that overall.
I'm going to put on my devil's advocate hat because I sat in this chair for a long time, and maybe we answer this in the blog, Allie. What I just heard Al say is I need another person who sits in every meeting and listens to everything and writes everything down. What value are they bringing? What's the cost of that? Again, we've already said this is not the cheapest system out there, right? Having an admin, an architect, a BA, having these people in a sizable org to do these things is not cheap. But you did all this to find value, bring value to the company. So you make better decisions and you can make them faster, right? Has anybody ever tried to go find a paperclip in your junk drawer? Right? It's not where you keep the most important things. Where you keep your most important things is a very organized place. So data is invaluable, right? AI is a topic that we can't get through an hour a day without talking about it, but it's only as valuable as the data that it has access to. If you give it access to crap, you get a really rapid, clear picture of crap. The value in this is just invaluable. But yeah, I think when we blog about this, Allie, it'd be great to kind of speak to, this is not necessarily a person. It might be a combination of tool and a custom GPT that helps build some disciplines that rapidly pull those things out to summarize all your meeting notes, all your design decisions, all your UAT, whatever those things are. So you have this running list of artifacts, this documentation, this journal of your journey. But yeah, great call out, guys. I appreciate it. I felt like this could be a 7-hour episode. We probably could have made it that way, but it took me 2 years of figuring out on my own how important this was. And you guys did a great job in 20 minutes of kind of breaking down why it's a problem. What is the problem? Why do people resist it? And how easy is it to turn the tide and actually start making a difference? So appreciate time from both of you today. Go ahead.
If it helps, the only reason that we're able to answer these questions is because I'm pretty sure we both cried at 2 a.m. over some issues before.
Yeah. Indeed. We didn't all go to school to avoid these problems, and we're talking theory. This is mostly from experience. Good deal. All right. Any closing thoughts, Al?
I think that we've covered a lot here today. I would say anybody who is handling this right now, is running an organization, don't be afraid. Jump in, take control over it. And the sooner you do it, the better. It'll come for you eventually. So better to face it head on and make progress in the meantime.
Yeah. I'll quote our great leader. Bad news does not get better with time.
And I think my closing thought would just be, if you have questions, there are so many places you can go to ask them. And there are so many people who are absolutely willing to help answer those questions. We have such a strong Trailblazer community where if you need help, you can ask for it. Head to Ohana Slack. If you're in Sales Cloud, hop into Service Blazer. If you're in Service Cloud, hop into Service Blazer. There are people who will help you and give you recommendations on where to start. And I know so many people who love to talk about helping our orgs become better and more valuable. So don't be afraid to connect with people and ask those questions.
Could not agree more. I will say it probably 25 times this year. One of the best things Salesforce has ever done was create a community. I personally have benefited more times than I care to confess, but great call out, Allie. Thank you. Thank you both for your time today. We're going to look forward to some more great topics to come in and talk about. This is Salesforce at Scale, trying to help people navigate the horizon that can seem daunting, but we want to make it a little more digestible for our audience. So thank you all both for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you take one thing away from today's episode, it's this: bad news doesn't get better with time. Technical debt must be addressed. Start small, inventory what you have, measure what's actually used, and put governance around how change enters your org. If you need help figuring out where to begin or how to turn cleanup into a sustainable operating model, Serious Solutions can help you build the plan and the culture to keep Salesforce scalable. Thanks for listening. We'll look forward to seeing you in the next episode of Salesforce at Scale.